Hey everybody, I'm Zale Mednik and welcome to another episode of Preconceived. Holocaust denial is one of the most disturbing and consequential forms of historical distortion. The Holocaust did happen. That is a fact, not something that is up for debate. Yet despite the vast amounts of factual evidence, there are still those who make it a mission to disprove its occurrence. In an era where misinformation spreads faster than ever, confronting the deliberate rewriting of history is perhaps more relevant now than ever. Denial isn't simply about rejecting facts. It's an assault on memory, on survivors, and on our ability to learn from the darkest chapters of the past. To help us navigate this topic, I'm joined by one of the world's leading experts on the architecture, evidence, and history of the Holocaust, Professor Robert Jan van Pelt. Robert Jan has taught at the University of Waterloo School of Architecture since 1987 and held appointments at many institutions of higher level education in Europe, Asia, and North America, including the Architectural Association in London, the Technical University in Vienna, the University of Kassel, the National University of Singapore, the University of Virginia, Clark University, and MIT. He's the recipient of many academic honors, including the National Jewish Book Award, a Guggenheim Fellowship, and the dignity of university professor. He's published 13 books dealing with diverse topics such as the cosmic speculations on the Temple of Solomon, relativism in architectural history, the history of Auschwitz, the history of the Holocaust, Jewish refugees, Holocaust denial, and most recently an Atlas of Jewish Space, which accompanied the opening in 2021 of a new synagogue at the site of the Babin Yar massacre in Kyiv. His last book is The History of the Prefabricated Barrack, which he published in 2024. An internationally recognized authority on the history of Auschwitz, Van Pelt's work was featured in the BBC Horizon program Blueprints of Genocide, and he acted as a senior consultant to the BBC PBS series Auschwitz, Inside the Nazi State. He chaired the University of Waterloo School of Architecture team that developed a master plan for the preservation of Auschwitz. Because of his expertise on the construction of the gas chambers and the crematoria, Van Pelt has been very much involved in the struggle against Holocaust denial, which focuses on the architectural evidence of Auschwitz. He appeared in Errol Morris's film on the Holocaust denier Fred A. Luchter, Mr. Death, The Rise and Fall of Fred A. Luchter, and served as an expert witness for the defense in the notorious libel case Irving versus Penguin and Lipstadt, in the movie Denial in 2016 starring Rachel Weisz, which is based on this trial. Van Pelt is played by British actor Mark Gatiss. His forensic work in the crematoria of Auschwitz generated the evidence room installation, creating in collaboration with Waterloo professors Anne Bordelot and Donald McKay and a team of Waterloo students, and shown first at the 2016 Venice Architecture Biennale, in 2017 at the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto, and in 2019 at the Hirshhorn Museum in Washington, D.C. He is the chief curator of the international traveling exhibition Auschwitz, Not Far Away, Not Long Ago, which first opened in Madrid and has been shown to date also in New York, Kansas City, Los Angeles, Boston, Toronto, and Cincinnati. This exhibition includes over 650 artifacts. Van Pelt was a member of the KPMB Daoust Lestage architectural team that won the competition for a new home for the Montreal Holocaust Museum and is the co-curator of the new permanent exhibition of this museum. All right, Robert Jan van Pelt, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me and for pronouncing my name in the correct manner.
We're going to talk about anti-Semitism, which is obviously baked into Holocaust denialism, and I want to talk about that a little bit more in depth afterwards and relate that to kind of the modern world right now. But I want to understand a little bit more before we get into the proof of the Holocaust that you've outlined architecturally. You said the arguments that a Holocaust denier would say are, they would say it's fabricated evidence. They would say interpretation of evidence. What are some of the main things that their argument sort of leans on traditionally? Granted that these aren't rational or fair arguments that they're putting forth, I'm curious to kind of get inside their minds of what would they say, what was Irving saying as his main argument of how this could not exist?
Now, when we were in this trial, and I was an expert witness, on the limited issue of Auschwitz, but in Holocaust denial, Auschwitz is always at the center of things. The team that supported, the legal team that supported Deborah Lipstadt, who was in this case, the defendant. Irving was the plaintiff, and he basically sued her for defamation because she had written that Irving was a Holocaust denier and an anti-Semite. And so one of the important things in the defense was basically established motivation. And the core motivation that the lawyers brought forward, and which the judge accepted, was the fact that Irving is an anti-Semite. He's an anti-Semite, and hence he is a Holocaust denier. And there was sufficient proof for that. Now, and so we cannot get talking about this issue without first raising the issue of anti-Semitism. And that is that Holocaust deniers say that the Holocaust is a hoax, that it is the Holocaust didn't exist, but many people believe that it exists. There movies are being made about it, there are many books about it. All the books behind me are Holocaust books, Holocaust histories. There are survivors who are testifying and so on, there are Holocaust education programs, but all of this is based on nothing, because Jews, the cabal, the elders of Zion, whatever you want to call it, a group of powerful Jews fabricated this story. And they did it basically for a number of different reasons. First of all, to, always, and this is always when we talk about anti-Semitic mythology, we talk about ultimately the relationship of finance to whatever Jews are doing. So the idea was that it is a hoax created to swindle the Germans out of billions of Deutschmarks, in reparations and so on. And then, of course, in more recent time, what's added to it is the Palestinians out of a homeland. That is very crudely the primary motivation of this alleged cabal, which nobody has ever, said who these people were. But, if we go to the US today, certainly a number of people will claim that Mr. Soros was part of it, even when he was a little boy in 1944, Budapest. But the idea is it is to get money, and in addition to get, I would say, kind of some influence, a major influence in the media, in a global discourse, to be able to control it. And, for example, then even to control the behavior of, let's say, European nations who will feel very guilty about what this Holocaust would have been, and they support the state of Israel or America and so on. So this is basically a classical anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. That would be the first thing. The second thing, and this was particularly Irving in his early day, is that they say it's actually a hoax created by the Secret Service of the Allies in the early 1940s. And that goes back to the fact that in the First World War, indeed, both the Entente, that is the England and France and Russia and so on, and the Central Powers on the other side were engaged in rather crude atrocity propaganda. So that Belgian priests were hung in church belfries, and that their bodies were used as clappers in bells. That all the nurses who were executed, whatever like that. And so, and this was proven to be all fake. So what happened in the First World War, in the heat of the propaganda war, is now transposed to the Second World War, and so during the Second World War, also many English people and even Americans, when they heard the stories coming out of Europe about the mass executions of Jews, and then from 42 onwards, the genocidal scale of the executions, always would say this is just, atrocity propaganda like we had 25 years ago in the First World War. And so, and basically what Irving claimed, and certain other Holocaust deniers, is yes, it was atrocity propaganda, and it got its own life. And it got its own life after the war, especially when Jews, the Jews started to exploit this propaganda, which they hadn't created, but it was very convenient to do so for their own nefarious ends. So that would be the second reason. Then we come to, sorry?
Go ahead.
So there we have, what is it, why was it created? And then we get a kind of, a defense that deniers do, because many Holocaust deniers have admiration for Germany. Yeah. So we start out, who is guilty for this? This is Allied propagandists, or it is the Jews. And why is it that the Germans would not have done this? And then we get the logic, that it wouldn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense in terms of prosecuting a war. And of course, it didn't make any sense. This is why it is kind of separate from the story of the war, the way the war unfolded as a legitimate, let's call it, a traditional war between opposing parties. And then they say, okay, of course there were deportations, but there were also deportations of Poles from the annexed territories of Germany. It's not really that much different when the Jews were deported. And of course there were deportations and internment of Germans in certain countries, in Allied countries. Then there were also the deportations of Germans from Eastern and Central Europe towards Germany in 1945, and basically the remaining German population from Poland and Czechoslovakia was expelled, in one big swoop. So this is just part of what was happening in these days. It was part of the ethnic rearrangement of Germany. So nothing special, Look at it in the big picture, and when we have trains leaving with Jews, it's no different than trains leaving with other people. Yeah, there was a lot of movement of ethnic groups at that time.
This was part of the demographic shift in the war.
In the war, and it was normal, or at least it was normalized. It did happen continuously in the war, and because of course Hitler had claimed that there was going to be a new arrangement of ethnic groups, within whatever new boundaries he was establishing, imposing on Europe. There was, for example, talk in 1940 that the whole German population of the area in northern Italy, the Adige area, so around Trento, and north of it, Bolzano, there was a German minority there, and that German minority would be moved into Germany proper, into Austria. That's today Austria. So there was a lot of talk. Some of it was executed, much of it wasn't, and what happened to the Jews is not different than that. Yeah, and then the Russians did the same, the Soviets did the same. Big deportations of Poles towards Siberia and so on from 1940 onwards. So then the next thing is to say, okay, Jews died, not 6 million, but they will always try to haggle down the number. But they say it's part of the ordinary mortality in the war. Yeah, so that's the next thing. Germans died, Soviet citizens died, Poles died, Jews died. They're just victims of a very violent war. This is not a genocide. Yeah. And therein, of course, become the gas chambers very important, because the Germans did, murder Jews in the occupied Soviet territory as part of what they called the anti-partisan warfare. Yeah, so they're fighting partisans, and in some way Jews get caught up in that, and they end up in pits, dead. And so deniers will say that yes, that was happening. Of course, civilians get caught in these operations, especially anti-partisan operations, because the partisans are not wearing uniforms and they are, living amongst the civilian population, etc., etc., etc. But they run into a big problem when we reach the issue of the gas chambers, because when Jews are being murdered with machine guns or people carrying rifles, like happened in the Einsatzgruppen operation in the Western Soviet Union in 1941, the German occupied part of the Western Soviet Union, then those weapons were not created to murder civilians. Those weapons were created, as arms for soldiers who were going to fight other soldiers. But when we're talking about gas chambers, and especially gas chambers that are going to be combined with big incineration installation next to it, and the incineration installations are, capable, in the case of Auschwitz-Birkenau, to incinerate 4,500 corpses per day, and they're right next to these gas chambers, then you wonder, gas chambers, you cannot explain them away as being part of conventional warfare. It's not that you basically get, the soldiers from the Soviet Union or the Brits or the Americans to say, come to my beautiful building here, and then you lock them up in a gas chamber and you murder them with gas. This is not the way that war is being fought. It can only be explained as being an installation that is going to be used for murdering unarmed civilians.